Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Art Feedback. Today we're gonna do a little paint over for a friend of mine, Valk, and he sent me this prop. It's like a dragon egg that he painted, and I did a little paint over with some ideas on how to improve it. And I'm just gonna narrate it after the fact. So the first thing I noticed when looking at this is that the difference of contrast doesn't really bring the focus to the place that should be in focus, because you really struggle to see the dragon inside the egg, and I think the lighting can be improved. So what I'm doing right now is just reducing some of that light in the background, because I really want the egg itself to glow later. So the first thing I do is just reduce some of that light in the back. Then I noticed there is a lack of contrast overall, so I'm brushing in some darker values to bring more contrast for when I'm gonna add the light, which is what I'm starting to do right now. I'm just gonna erase out the dragon, and I'm gonna paint it later from scratch again, and using some neutral tones there in the back to block some of that light and make it lighter at the bottom, as if there is a light source, like maybe there is a lava floor or some flame, something that comes from the bottom, and that contrasts, with the dark silhouette of the eggshell shape there at the bottom, right? And after that, I still want to add more light inside the egg, because I really wanted to bring forward the idea of, maybe what's inside is a glowing liquid sort of things. And I really want it to be the main attraction, the main focus of this piece. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time adding some love to the inside of the egg. Now I'm gonna jump in and try to bring these lights, rim light coming from the left, and instead of just having it hit the side of the piece, I'm gonna actually make it illuminate the form of the egg a little more, so it's more prominent and it helps define the form of the object a little more. I think that's pretty important to show the three-dimensionality of the object. Once that is done, I also think, there is this light coming from the top left. It's probably gonna hit the bottom of the eggshell as well, and you will see me in a second. I'm also gonna have it influence the bottom floor, like the plane where the egg is sitting. Because, if there is light coming from there, it's gonna influence the environment as well. It's not just gonna hit a little tiny spot. Unless it's a very small light and just sitting close to the egg, then it's gonna influence the plane where it's standing. And there I just added a little specular highlight on the egg to show, the material is smoother than the rock. And here just checking the values to see if it's, if it's working. And I always wanna make sure that the overall read remains strong, that I'm not changing things that are damaging the read of the piece. And now I like to introduce some color variety and define the shapes of the outer shell of the egg a little bit better, at least, because it was kinda all of the same color and very smushed together. Like there was not a lot of color variety, not a lot of shape definition, or like a thickness to the forms. It was all very, very thin. So what I'm doing is just, brushing in some more of that variety, some more of that form to make it stand out slightly more. And also bringing some of that warmth from the inside of the egg onto the shell as well, because some of that is gonna influence and bounce around and illuminate the planes of the rock that are facing it or that are closer to facing it. And here I decided to change the silhouette of the, the bottom part of the egg, because I wasn't really feeling that kind of shape. You see me sometimes flipping the canvas, and it sort of gives you a fresh perspective over the piece, and I think that is pretty important, at least for me. It really helps me see the piece and not get used too much. Because when you start looking at the piece for too long and always in the same way, you stop noticing certain mistakes, and then when you flip it, you're like, oh my god, what is this? It's horrible. So you can then fix it. And I would say at this point, the main structure, like the main changes, are pretty much there. From this point forward, like the rest, the second half of the video is just gonna be a few more changes. And of course, I still need to add back the dragon egg. And all of these is real time. So the overall paintover is just 15 minutes, something very, very quick. And same reasoning here for the ambient light that comes from top left. The egg also is going to influence what's around it and not just the immediate eggshell. I also decided, it's probably gonna influence the ground plane as well. Adding some grays, and I think I really love adding grays like that because they tend to complement whatever you put them next to, and it creates a richness, which might sound strange or crazy in a sense, because you're adding gray, so why would it be rich? But then gray in context, or also a more heavily desaturated version of the color you put it next to, it becomes rich by contrast. So if you put desaturated red or brown or orange close to more saturated one, it's gonna appear cooler, right? So that's what gives the richness to the color. And now I'm finally adding back the little dragon. I'm sort of following the previous placement, but I'm just gonna slightly change the design, bring in the tail, but make it follow more the curve of the egg, because it's inside, so it's gonna wrap following the form. And I'm not an expert on creature anatomy, so it's not gonna be the best looking dragon or anything like that. But I also wanted to, pop and make a little bit more sense than what it was before. Because in the original, you're going to see that it doesn't really work that well as a dragon. And I'm not exactly sure the design choices that were made for that, but I think it was important for me, to make these changes to make it look more like a baby dragon. Just pushing the contrast a little bit more on the dragon, because that's our focal point. And even though we have a pretty strong light coming from the left, I think adding those accents inside the egg brings our focus there, because we see the face, we see the dragon, we know that's more interesting than the rocky egg outside. So adding just the notch of extra contrast, the little spark, so to speak, helps us bring more focus to where we want our viewer to look. And you probably see me jumping around brushes. Well, not too many brushes. I only used a few brushes, and I actually used the ones that I reviewed in the previous video. as you can see by the preview there on the top left. So that's why I wanted to make that video. I really wanted to encourage people to give them a chance and try them out because they're pretty nice. But I would also like to encourage to make your own. I might share these in the future for you guys to try, but I also think it's a better idea to, watch the videos, understand the settings, but then try to create the brushes by yourself. Because I think when you make the brushes, you gain a better understanding of how to use them. And it's just, oh, I got this brush from someone else. And, so more often than not, I would say that when you get brushes from other people, since you don't know exactly how those were made or what properties are there or how that person uses it, I think you struggle more to get a good result because it's not your brush, it's not your tool, it's someone else's. And I think it's important to make your own brushes for that reason. That's it. But of course, you can also, get brushes from people and then learn how to use them. And sometimes, you might end up using them in a different way than other people and get a different result, and that is also fine, I think. But to me personally, I found value on making my own brushes recently, even though I still use some brushes that I downloaded along the years. I'm just spending most of the time right now in the piece noodling at this baby dragon because, like I mentioned, it's the focal point, and when you spend time, it's probably a good idea to spend it on the focal point and not somewhere else. Like you see that I haven't really touched the background since I brushed it in those few strokes at the beginning because it serves the purpose. It's working the way I want it to. So there's no really much point in just working on that. But working on the dragon definitely pays higher dividends in this case. And at this point, we're only a couple minutes away, and after defining the focal point, I think I'm just probably gonna move on to pushing the lights and creating that nice magical glow to it, which is, the final touches pretty much. And I also wanted to add a touch of gray there to, make it feel like there is the cool light is getting in the egg from that hot spot, that specular highlight, and it's also slightly influencing the baby dragon inside. But you want to be careful not to overdo that kind of things because it might become too much really quickly. And it's time for some lighting. I always create a black layer, set it on linear dodge. Then I would grab a soft brush, set the brush also on linear dodge. Then grab a very dark color and start brushing in. What this does is basically it keeps adding light on top of light because you have the layer and the brush. So it's not just fixed at the value of the brush that you picked, but the more you brush on top of the light, the more it's gonna add. But you also want to be careful because if you're not careful, you're gonna burn the light. So you can see I'm being fairly gentle with the brushing in. And I'm gonna do the same for the cool light because I think that really adds that extra nice finish of a glowy exterior light. And it creates that beautiful contrast of cool and warm, which was basically my idea when going in and doing these paint over. And you see the little glow that I added in the corner there, like the cool glow. Basically, the thought process is there's probably dust and particles in the atmosphere and that tend to pick up the light and scatter it. And that's why you get those, those hazy atmospheres, that those very dense light that come through, the volumetric lighting effect that you see in games and 3D. That's basically the same thing, the same process. When you have things in the atmosphere, they tend to scatter light around and create that sort of glowy effect. And you want to be careful and know this, because if you start adding glow like crazy everywhere, especially where it doesn't make sense, say you have a very a closed scene that doesn't have a lot of atmosphere, doesn't have particles and stuff, and you start adding in glow, then it's gonna look like fog or things like that, because in that instance it wouldn't really make sense in most cases to have such a strong diffusion of light. It's important to know the fundamentals for this very reason, I feel like. So you're always making informed choices. And yeah, that was pretty much it, guys. Here's the comparison for the paintover, and I hope you found it useful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys!